use my teacher voice. How about that? So today I'm going to highlight the service center that we use. The Southeast Education Service Center is one of 4 RESAs in the state, so regional education service centers. It's been in place since 1969, and these service centers were designed by the state to support rural school districts. And our particular region, there we go, our particular region supports Carbon, Emory, Grand, and of course San Juan. And the superintendents of those 4 school districts serve as the board for SJSD. Part of the reason I'm highlighting this is we have a new director for SJSD that we've hired. His name is John Hughes. He's worked in education for over 23 years and has been an elementary administrator for 10 of those years. He currently resides in Emory School District, and he has for the last 20 years. So we're excited that he's going to be taking on the role of director for the SJSD for us. Some of the things that they work on at SJSD is to support the work that we do individually in the district. So some of that is very much driven by what do we need as an individual district, how can we come together as rural school districts to receive equitable training for our staff and teachers without the additional burden of the cost. So by forming together versus a large district along the Wasatch Front, that helps us do that. So some of the goals that he's put forward as part of our 90-day plan is really looking at technology training in STEM, academic training, including supporting our letters initiatives, school safety training, counselor training, and they also support our Rural Schools Conference, which is specific conference every summer for all of our rural school districts in the state of Utah. So really just wanted to highlight that partnership we have. You know, allows us to come together with those districts as well to save money as we say, for example, Edgenuity we have in collaboration. It's one of our online platforms we use for credit recovery, and if we were going to pay for that independently, those licenses, it would cost us more than combining together and pulling our resources. So they help manage a number of things like that. They also are providing an instructional coach for us as of last year, half of the year, and then this upcoming year. So Anna Hart has been that instructional coach. So they've worked to get that, acquire that funding, and then she works for SJSD. So that's what I wanted to highlight.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. All right, let's move down to our discussion items. So, Mr. Murdoch, are you ready? You're just busy working away. This is the second viewing of our preschool curriculum adoption.
Do you guys have any questions for me on that? We did put out a survey, and we individually contacted preschool parents to have feedback, and we've received no feedback. So just to let you know on that. Any other thoughts or questions?
This is a second viewing, and if I believe it is on as a possible action item, so
This evening.
if nobody has any questions.
I think the only question I had was what the parents or the teachers' response to the survey too, but you answered that.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
So, but teachers were a part of this, is
Yeah,
that correct?
Teachers were part of the
preschool
adoption
teachers?
process, yes. Or the recommendation for adoption.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this is expected to last our school district for how many years?
We talked about this
Last
last time.
time.
There's no guarantee on that, but hopefully 7-ish years. The current one we have is at least 10 years old, and it's just way outdated given current standards.
Okay. And then as I talked to you earlier, and then I read that it was clear in the minutes about the STEM, and so Blanding doesn't have the
The summer program
summer
that the
school.
grant is paying for, no.
Monticello or.
Monticello or Blanding.
Blanding.
White Mesa, Montezuma Creek, Bluff, and TES Elementaries all have those programs this
Okay,
summer.
paid for through the grant, and it's the same grant that is also purchasing the curriculum for
Yes.
preschool?
Yes.
Okay, and so, remind me what the grant, do we regularly get this grant?
No, this is the first and I talked about this in my presentation. I had applied for a couple different grants through the Department of Health and Human Services, which is where preschool funding ends up flowing through.
Okay.
And we did not get those. So people at USBE knew that I was looking for resources, and they connected Lisa with me, Lisa from Utah State, with me after she had received the grant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Yep, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
And We'll jump down to our two new spend plans. This is the first viewing for the robotics and cross-country for Navajo Mountain. Derek?
All right, good afternoon. So the only addition to these spin plans was adding an additional night to stay because of the distance from Navajo Mountain to these events that they'll be attending for robotics and cross-country. So that was the only change within these ones. Is there any questions?
So these are the same from last year?
So these will
Or-
be the updated ones for next school year.
So they're
Yeah.
amended, of
So the only
course.
change with that,
Okay.
again, besides the $14 meal and the hotel rates, in addition to that would be just an extra night of stay for those events for next school year.
Okay,
Okay.
anything? Heard?
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, now we're gonna have Laura come up. We have a lot of policies to go over. It just came out of policy committee.
Remind me which one we have first.
So the first one will be the criminal background checks, 4122, and that is our first viewing.
Yeah, so this is our first viewing, so we are just updating the policy to be in line with the current code and rule. Some of the bigger changes that were made is our current policy does not have our ongoing monitoring, our RATBAC system listed, which we have put in the new policy. We've also outlined who is required to have a background check. And this year, there was a rule passed as well that we cannot charge for background checks for any of those people listed, so that was changed in the policy as well. And then we did remove some things you might have noticed, such as the requirement to report arrest information, because that is addressed in our employee ethics policy, so it's already addressed in another policy, so this one will just be focused on background checks only. And then also defining more, making sure we're in line with state code and rule on what we are considering when we're reviewing background checks for employment.
Does anyone have questions about this? So this is, like I said, our first viewing on this one. There's lots of red lines.
We removed a lot.
Yeah.
If I had any questions, that would be the only thing was that just, the ones that was crossed out was just repetition all around?
A lot of it was just outdated, so it
Okay.
talked about that some of our employees would have to get a new background check every 6 years, and with our new system, that's not required. And then it had a lot of old wording for the form they signed to get their background check, so that was a big chunk of it. And then the arrest was a lot as well, and that is addressed in another policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move to 2240, which is our Board of Education
Yeah,
compensation.
so this one's just one sentence. So we are required to define what our elected officials are under Utah Retirement System's eligibility for retirement. So we are already doing this, but we are required to have it in policy that all of our board members are part-time and ineligible. And Tier 2 is just Utah retirement term, meaning anyone elected after July 1st of 2011. So that's what that wording means.
Okay, any comments on that? Okay, let's go to our instructional resources, 5310. That's a first viewing also. Oh,
We're gonna
yes,
bring
Jeff.
Jeff up.
Come on up. Glad you're with us, thank you.
It's going to be a team effort. So this one might look familiar to you. I believe you passed this just last school year. But there were a lot of changes with this legislative session that we needed to define objective sensitive materials and subjective sensitive materials, as well as outline a process to review both of them. So I did print off, and I hope all of you have one, of this checklist. I found it was easier looking at this and when reading the policy, so it makes sense on the steps we're taking. After our policy committee worked on this policy, the state boards had their board meeting and they released even additional information for us, which is where this checklist came from. So we will have to still edit some of this before our second reading, but that will include, we will need to add step 2 on this checklist of how we will review the objective sensitive materials, And then also on step 5, the disposal of the materials will need to be addressed in the policy as well. So those are two pieces we will still need to update. And I also put on the board docs in the executive content some definitions from state code that will give you more information on what an objective material really is.
This is why you read at night, when you have nothing else to read.
It was fun reading too, I'm sure.
But there's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot in here.
Yeah, like I
so.
said, the objective and subjective sensitive materials is what really needs to be defined, and then we are required to have a process to review both of those. So that's why you'll see some appeal processes and things defined in there as well. We also had to add removing the books if the state requires us to, because once it hits a threshold with the state, all school districts will be required to remove some books, so that was added. Anything else you can think of?
I don't think so. I think that's the biggest change. And I think the other change that is different than last year's bill is that if it's objective sensitive material on page, it doesn't matter the literary value of the whole book. Last year's bill said we could take into account the literary value of the whole work when determining whether to remove or not, and now it says if it's objective sensitive material, it doesn't matter what the literary value of the work is, it has to be removed.
Okay, now I may have missed this in reading, but under 5310.6 library materials review process. So probably last year or year before, I was notified by somebody who didn't have somebody in the schools of some books, and then I checked and we did have those books. And as board member, I wasn't, I couldn't question that, and neither could they, because they didn't currently have a child in the school where that book was.
So you'll see that.
But now it's added for a school board member.
That is one of the changes.
But one of the things I would like to see, and as I understand it, that all school districts are different and we can do what we want, is if there is, so let's say somebody has a child in Blanding Elementary, which was the case, but the school that had the questionable materials was actually all of the rest of our middle schools and high schools in San Juan School District. This this parent is going to end up at ARL, and they have no way of.
So that's one of the changes as well. It's no longer
Okay.
a student in that school, it's just a student of the district.
Student,
So
okay.
they could
That's
do
right,
what you're
it says
saying
that
right
here.
now. They could say, there's
Okay.
this book in Monticello, my kids are in Blanding, but they still could make the review
Okay,
request.
I am reading that right now, that actually says that.
That is one of the
So,
changes.
but let me throw out something else. What if right now I'm a school board member. In January, I will just be a grandma, and I will have concerns possibly of materials. So, if somebody brings it to our attention, why wouldn't we allow them, because it is a review process, right? It's not like, if somebody brings it to the attention, we throw it out. It's then starts a review process. And so as constituents in San Juan School District, I would be very interested in allowing, people are helping to pay for those books if they live in San Juan School District, and they have maybe grandchildren or neighbor children or somebody who has access to materials that are questionable. So I would like to see us more broad if somebody who's helping to pay for these materials because they're paid for by tax dollars and they're constituents of San Juan School District, that we allow them to bring that to our attention and allow that process to move forward if somebody.
I can look at that, but if I'm remembering correctly, that's straight out of the code and the rule, that those are the people who can bring a complaint or review forward. So that wasn't something that I felt was up to the district, but I can look at that further.
Okay, yeah, if you would look at that further, because I understood by talking to one of the state school board members that that would be a possibility. And I just think if anybody in the county, knows of a book that is questionable, that book ought, they ought to be able to have a review process on that. So if you would look at that, that'd be great. Thank you.
I would think that is probably was written so that school districts weren't inundated from parties around the state that aren't tied to our county. But I'll look at that as well.
Yeah, and I would say within San Juan School District, a constituent, somebody who is a resident of San Juan School District, and not somebody from outside. That would, but I think we can use all the eyes we can get. If somebody knows something that is questionable, I would want to know. And then if we find it not questionable, then that's that.
Hopefully, as board members, we're available to the public, and they can bring that to us, with us being one of the people that could bring it up as well.
And I agree with that, because it'd be my worry that we'll have this big book burning situation going on when it really doesn't need to be that too, so hopefully that
Well,
policy and review.
Mind you, on that paragraph below too, that if an individual, if they bring three within that year and they're unsuccessful, they cannot come again. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
It's so time consuming that there are not very many people who will spend their time reading the books. And that's why I'm thinking if somebody knows of something, then why not let them bring that, bring that to the school district? Because it's way too time consuming for people to want to spend their time doing that. We won't be inundated. I can almost guarantee that.
Okay, is there any more questions on this?
Can I just add, so we're required to put this policy in place by September 1, so just be aware that as we move through this policy, we'd like to make sure that it's ready to go, because this needs to be in place for parents and school board members and whoever is approved on this policy to be able to put those complaints in, and we can't do that until we update this policy.
Okay, I didn't read that in there. Is it noted in here?
That's not noted in there. That
No, that's
was
just
some of
from
the
the state.
information we received.
Can we add that, this is information for us now, but then if it can be added on,
Yep, I'll make sure to put it on our
Thanks.
information item.
that's good to know.
Any other questions?
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to our home instructional program, which is a second viewing.
Okay, so this is our second reading for the homeschooling policy. So just a reminder, we removed all the homebound instruction, and then just in our homeschooling, we added the language about the affidavit that parents are required to sign when they put their children into homeschool. So that was the changes made to this policy.
Any questions? Okay.
Is there anything else you want to note as to be?
No, that's the whole, yeah, all of that red is just about the affidavit.
Okay. And then our extracurricular.
Yes.
4540.
So this is the second reading for this one as well. Changes made to this, definitions, and then also not allowing our classified staff to coach, because that becomes a violation of fair labor standards, is why we're making that determination. And then also changing administrators from not being allowed to coach to being allowed to coach in their building with approval from the superintendent. So those are the changes in this policy.
Okay. And that is also on the action item if possible. Okay. I think that's it.
All right.
That was a lot. Thank you. Okay. We will go down to number 8 for our capital follow-up.
Well, we just cruised right along, didn't we?
You can go. You can do the next
Thought it was
two,
gonna be
actually.
a little while. All right, just a quick update for the school board. A couple of projects that you all have approved. So the Navajo Mountain HVAC project will be completed this summer. Buildings and Grounds Department, the maintenance department has set that up and arranged for all of that. So that work will be going on this summer to replace their HVAC system, their rooftop units there. So that's taking place right now. I know that Mr. Correo has also been working with Montezuma Creek Elementary School so that we can get a new playground, which I know the school is really excited about. That that will be taking place. It's likely not going to happen right before the start of the school year. He's worked with the school, and if we need to, we'll just close the playground for a couple of weeks. That's what the vendors have told us. They can get a new playground installed. So that's just a quick update there. That one probably won't happen before the start of the school year, but they are making progress on that project. And then I think we sent an email around just to give you all a heads up that we were awarded the grant from Energy Fuels to replace the lighting at the ball fields behind San Juan High School. So we'll be working on that in the coming months. We did replace the transformer with the help of the city and working on that, and so that has been done. And the lights are currently operational. So it shouldn't impact any of the activities that go on this summer. And then we'll work on improving the lights, later summer, early fall, to get all of that completed there to reduce our energy costs and improve just the lighting system as a whole. So just wanted to give those updates there. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Anybody have questions?
Did we find when, if they have to close down the playground, about when it'll open it back up if it goes into the school year?
So it would be a 2 weeks, so they can install in 2 weeks is what the vendors are telling Tom.
Okay.
So we would just have no playground equipment for 2 weeks. The rest of the playground would be open and available, but just no playground equipment for 2 weeks during that time. And if we can work it around in a time that works best for the school and everyone else, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Do you want to go to travel reimbursement rates?
Do
Yes.
you have any, let's see, we don't have anything else on the school. Do you have, we have.
For Blanding Elementary School? No, so dirt is moving there a lot, and I feel really horribly for the neighbors, and Nan, you probably know
It's also moving dirt a lot.
better than anyone.
Yeah.
The last that I've heard is that they hope to, by mid-July, have the majority of the heavy moving done, so that'll reduce the amount of dust and dirt that's kind of in the air. I know they have been putting as much water down as they can to try to mitigate that, but there's a lot of dirt that had to be moved. So that's progressing, and we'll bring another update in August when we come back, or July if we have a meeting there. But anything specific that on blending, we're moving along.
Looks good. Okay.
All right.
All right.
The travel reimbursement rates. So this is just to kind of bring to the board's attention. So with our approved spend plans that and our fee schedule for students, we increased the meal rate to $14. And so just wanted to point out that our current staff meal reimbursements, we are currently 10 for breakfast, 12 for lunch, and 18 for dinner. So, if a student went on a trip and was receiving a meal amount for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they would receive 14 for every meal, because we don't split that up for students. And staff would be receiving less than what that 14 is for the students. So just wanted to bring that to our attention. And one thought that was brought up is maybe we look at changing the meal reimbursement to like a 10-14 for lunch and 18 and that gives you an average of $14 per meal for a full day. Breakfast is the least commonly reimbursed meal, because most of people, if they're traveling, they're either eating at home and then they're staying in a hotel if they're staying somewhere that will provide the breakfast. So that's the least commonly reimbursed one, but we could go that route. I know in the past we've talked about the IRS reimbursement rates, which are significantly higher than what we offer and provide. So this is more, I guess, a discussion at the board level. If there's questions or thoughts that you have, just kind of wanted to bring it to our attention that we're currently, if staff and students attended the same exact thing, we would reimburse, and we're seeking the same reimbursement, we would reimburse staff less than what we would be giving students for the same meals. according to our fee schedule and spend plans. So any thoughts from the school board on,
Say one more
Yeah.
time the current,
Yeah, we don't
Say
have
the current
a
and
copy
then-
of that in our,
we are 10, 12, and 18
and we're talking 10, 14, 18.
yeah,
as a possibility.
Okay.
maybe not, I mean, if we had that
10, 14.
travel reimbursement.
So
in
our
the-
form is digital now. If you've used Drop, so we
Oh, it
don't
is.
utilize the, the spreadsheet or Excel sheets anymore, so.
14.
10, 14, and 20?
So
Is that what you
it's
said?
10, 12, 18.
So right now, we're
There we
10,
go.
12, and 18, so we're at $40 per day. And our students are 14 just per meal.
So we've got 10, 14, and 18.
Thank you.
So 10, 14, and 18 is just a thought, to throw out there to y'all, so that it averages to the 14, which is what we do for students.
Now, when students go, they're given, are they given cash? And if they've got 3 meals, they just have to make it last their 3 meals, because if they want to spend it all on breakfast, because they don't turn in a reimbursement form. So there's that little bit of difference there. But yeah, I think staff should
Correct.
definitely have as much as the students are
Yeah, agreed.
getting. And there again, when we talk about what the IRS rates are, just keep in mind, the federal government borrows money. They don't live within a budget. And so and you mentioned they're considerably higher, and we're not looking at going as high as the IRS, but to ever even compare ourselves to what the IRS and the federal government, they've never been responsible to live within a budget. They borrow money and just keep spending, so.
Okay, Steve?
I think the proposal in relation to the federal rate wasn't to pay the federal rate, but have it based on the federal rate. So if we want to say, okay, we're going to pay out at a certain percentage of whatever the current federal rate is, then as that federal rate changes, it just automatically changes what the school district pays out, and we don't have to sit down every 5 years and say, oh, we're way too low. What do we need to raise it to now? It just happens automatically year by year. So.
And the reason I don't like that is we need to work within the budget we have. What's our budget? Where does our money need to go in each category? And how much money do we have in the budget for this particular category, regardless of what the federal government's doing? It's like if you have a child and they're saying, but my friend spends this kind of money, or my friend gets this and that. Well, we don't have the same budget as the friend that lives next door, so let's worry about what we are bringing into our household income. Comparing it to the neighbor or to the federal government, again, I think is not practical. We just need to look at our budget and what our revenue is and how we divide it up and what we actually have to spend.
Any thoughts? Over here?
So is this an action item or just something that we need to consider? And that would just be changing for employees' travel reimbursement, basically?
It's an action item.
Okay.
It is listed as an action item.
Okay.
Possible. Yeah,
Okay.
we can always come back with this.
Okay.
I think it's just more on our minds now that we changed the spend plans and
Sure.
the fee schedule for students, that our staff are now lower on a per
Yeah.
meal basis, but.
It might be interesting to get some menus of some common places. We just did it kind of off a whim by saying, oh, when we're traveling, we didn't have any menus. We didn't have anything to look at when we made the decision to increase that. And I've since traveled. I don't travel a ton. I haven't paid really close attention till after we did that. And when people choose to drink water instead of pop, and if there's some choices people can make, and they're healthier choices sometimes and I think, possibly we could look at some menus and see what is really practical, unless we have lots and lots of money and we just raise everything.
So when we looked at students and we had those conversations when we were looking at spend plans, we did pull quite a few menus. Tyrell and I both looked at quite a few. A lot of times coaches are trying to find the healthier option that's less expensive, like Subway is a common one that you can find a Subway at a gas station stop along the way, right? So, but even looking at that, I still think we made the right decision going to $14 for students, because that expense, even if they don't get a soda, depending on how much they eat, you think about a high school senior that's on the football team, I mean, how much is he going to eat versus, like, I'm a terrible representation of how much you spend on food because I eat so little, but, when you're thinking about this and student athletes and what their needs are, so I think that, when you compare that to, and I appreciated your comment about our staff, having the same, at least an equitable thing that we're doing for students, so just so you know, we did look at menus across the state.
The school board did not. We didn't have those, but.
Okay. So, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say, would that be ideal though? I mean, $2 more added onto the lunch? I mean, should we look into it more? Like, do our research and say, is $24 enough for staff for dinner? I mean, we've been to an eatery, $24 is basically like a kid's menu or a single thing, depending on what your eating habits are too, so. Is that something we can look into more, do more research on? Because I feel like even though it's a slight increase, is it enough?
So, I'll ask for the motion, and then if no one wants to make it, we won't, and if we want to bring it back, we can.
Okay.
That's what everyone wants to do. I mean, what I'm asking is, if we bring it back, what specifically do we want, what information do we want back? That's what we need to decide.
So I'm getting the impression your recommendation is just to change the lunch amount. Would that be accurate?
I would recommend that we do at least that.
Okay.
That we just make it equitable for our staff as at least what students are getting, so it's not a inequity there. So we would recommend that something changed at the very least.
Okay.
So we could
And
do that and then look into it
further
more.
things we want to explore,
Yeah.
we can,
Okay.
to Steve's point, we looked at, a percentage of the IRS reimbursement too, and because we do 75% of the mileage reimbursement rate for our vehicles, and we do that, because we have fleet vehicles and it's more cost effective for people to take district vehicles and their own vehicle, and so we pay it 75% of what the IRS rate, which helps us as we reimburse those things, because to Steve's point, it's a set amount, and as that rate adjusts, we adjust our reimbursement form, and so that goes into effect, and we can just make that change. And we looked at 75% of what the IRS reimbursement rates were, but that was actually less than what our current forms are for lunch and for breakfast. I don't think it was for dinner, but so I don't know that a percent. Unless, we could run some different numbers, but, figuring out how we wanted to do that, if there's suggestions or ideas to look at a way to try to give us a target and, to Steve's point, not having to come back and say, are we too low? Because this is a very, it's a lot of preferences involved with this discussion. Where I go to eat versus where you go to eat is different, and that changes the cost, and so there's a lot of just subjectivity involved with the discussion as a whole. So if we had a target of what we were shooting for, that would help simplify things moving forward, so it's not something we have to always talk about. But anyways, just something to think about. And yes, to your point, and I'd say we'd at least do a minimum of bringing us on to the same level as our students.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and when we continue this discussion, if it's continued, I would like information about our budget and what we actually have to spend, and based on what we need to tax, levy taxes in order to keep that expenditure up, instead of this is what things cost out there, these are all the choices, so let's just increase it based on the wants. I would like to see us make the decision to increase it or not to increase it, whatever the decision may be, based on the money that we have, the revenue that we have coming in, and what we have to set the tax rates at to make that happen. And, look at our budget and make the decision, not like, let's go out and see what there is to spend and see how much money we'd love to spend. Let's look at our budget. Let's start there and then see what we have to spend, what we're setting the tax rates at. If you could have that information.
So
that
from
would
a
be-
budget perspective, the food reimbursement amount is actually the smallest cost to travel. So like we have travel budgets for district level programs. The majority of our travel expenses are actually from programs, from grants or other things that pay for people to attend travels. We're probably, somewhere between 25 and 30% is actually district expense travel. The rest of it is out of those different programs or grants. And so it's really hard to tell you, from a budget perspective, we wouldn't say that a change on this amount wouldn't require us to, levy any additional tax or anything. We are not even proposing increase to travel budgets at the district level programs. They would remain the same, as, like I said, it's pretty minimal, the amount that goes to these food meal reimbursements as our overall travel.
Well, I guess my question was, or my request is still the same, to look at the money coming in and where it comes from. That's good information for us. But we're already the 9th, for locally assessed tax, we're the 9th highest in the state out of 41 school districts. So it's minimal, we can just keep spending, but could we have the opportunity to actually lower our tax rate? What would the priority be for a school board to lower tax rates and look at what we're spending, or to just keep the tax rate as high and keep it up there? Anyway, so that's what I would like, is for that information.
Okay. Anything else, Steve?
So Mary, if you want to lower how much we'll say lower as a scenario, lower how much we're paying out for meals for employees so we can cut our tax rate, then we're really shifting the burden of meals onto the employees so we can cut the tax rate.
I don't remember saying that. Is that the
It's the
suggestion you
concept.
would?
Isn't it? So,
No.
okay, so
No.
another scenario, say
You
that.
misunderstood me completely. I'm just
Okay.
saying, if we have, what do you do at home? Do you tell your family, let's spend whatever we want, look around, let's spend whatever we want, we'll figure out a way to pay for it? Or you just say, this is our budget? And anyway, we budget from what's coming in and spend out, unless we want to live like the federal government. Anyway, a complete misunderstanding of what I'm saying. I didn't ever suggest that we lower it. I suggested that, as Tyrell
You're
mentioned,
suggesting that it be budget-driven
Yep.
rather than cost-driven,
Yes,
aren't you?
yes.
Okay. And so.
And
if
I don't
dec-
love that we have high taxes.
So if I decide to go out to eat with my family, when I'm used to paying $15 a plate, if the cost increases to $30 a plate, I pay the $30 a plate because that's how much it costs. Regardless of how much my funding is from sources from my revenue coming in, if I go out to eat, I pay what it costs. So I think it needs to be cost-driven rather than revenue-driven.
Well, I'm glad you always have the money to pay whatever, it is. But anyway, that's just my preference. We look at our budget.
Okay. Any more questions? All right, let's go to Utah if it's all scholarship.
Okay, so we received 2 parents that reached out requesting us to become a vendor for the Utah Fits All Scholarship. So just a reminder that the Utah Fits All Scholarship is the $8,000 that a parent can get for their student to cover the cost of education and using any of the approved vendors. So this was in legislation from the previous year, and this is the first year that is actually going into place. So I included the heat map from the end of April, which just shows the applications for our county. So some of the school districts, all the school districts are eligible to put in an application, develop policy, develop a system for becoming a vendor for the Utah Fits All Scholarship. Students cannot dual enroll, so if they receive the scholarship money, they cannot enroll in an LEA, and we don't get the WPU for them. So what part of this has been offered to LEAs is that we could become a vendor, and then we could develop a fee schedule, do all of that work to then charge for them to take a class from us, which would go through the wallet. They have a virtual wallet that they pay it through that would pay to the district. Some districts across the state have already indicated that they're going to become vendors. When you look at the heat map, for example, Washington County is one of those districts we've been told is looking at becoming a vendor. But if you look at the heat map and how many applications and how much funding they'll probably get in their county of students that will participate in this, and they're a larger school district with more staff to be able to manage this programming. But I did want to bring it to the board's attention, just so you're aware, and if in the future or now you would like us to become a vendor, that is a discussion that we can have. My recommendation at this point would be, for how small our district is, how few families are going to be receiving that scholarship, that we wait a year if we think that's the route we want to go. Again, this is money that's part of that voucher, I guess you could say, program. So that's really a decision the board can make if we even want to participate. But at this point, it would take, a number of things to do to get it in place. So I at least wanted to bring it to the board so we could have a discussion, knowing that there are 2 families in our county that have asked about this, specifically about taking a class at the high school.
Okay. So I think I understood that completely, and I had misunderstood says we received a request from a parent receiving the Utah Fits All Scholarship to become a vendor. So this is saying, I thought it was the whole time it was for the parent to become the vendor, but you're saying it's not actually.
No, so the parent is the
Okay,
parent of
I
a
was-
student who's received the scholarship.
Asked us
Yes.
if we would, which, okay, all right. I was so-
Which, do you want to give a little information about it's kind of extensive to become a vendor, correct?
Well, there's an application process so that we would fill out, and then it's setting up the financial component of it. And most likely that would be set up not as an LEA by each school that would participate. Part of the challenge for us is using the Aspire system. They can't, how we report to the state for the WPU comes from our student information system, which is Aspire. So there would have to be a back-end Aspire system set up by our staff to be able to even accommodate, because the student, we still have to take roll. We still would have to know an emergency. They'd have to integrate into our emergency platform that we use. There's a lot of systems and processes. It seems pretty simple to fill out an application and set up the financial part of it, but it's a lot more complex than that when you think about all of the programs we use in the school to ensure that our, everything from Canvas to how we take attendance and keep roll, to safety in the schools, how we monitor which students are in the building at any given time. All of that is part of that. So it's a little more complex than what it just seems like from just filling out an application.
So would a student who's got the scholarship, would they then connect with, you mentioned Washington School District, would they just use Washington or another school district?
So they can access any vendor, and I put the link on there so you could see, you can click on the vendors and see there are a lot of vendors available. Some of them are virtual vendors. I think when we consider the students that reached out and kind of what they're looking for more things like possibly PE or band or things that are better in person than online. So I think that's why that request is there. Those would be harder to take in a virtual environment. Washington, I don't know what they're doing as far as their online schooling system, because they have a whole separate system for that. I think what they, just from the little information I have about what they're doing is, they are setting a fee schedule to allow them to take a class in the school per credit.
Okay.
So
And I don't know that that's been approved by their board yet, so just know this is kind of
okay.
So this
background
is something,
information.
they're not looking to be a full-time student, they're just wanting a couple of classes and to get credit for those, so it's
If
complicated.
we're a vendor, then they can just come and do that, but if we're not a vendor,
They can. Now,
Can't in any way.
over
Okay,
the-
this is all new, and
Yeah.
but they can qualify, am I correct, for a fee waiver? For a fee
No.
waiver, or they cannot at all?
They cannot qualify for
We
fee
do-
waiver, and right now, I mean, that could be part of your fee schedule, is you could set up a fee schedule where there are fees for any extracurricular. You know, these are all options that are available, so you could say, we're only gonna offer, you know, these particular high school classes, or we're only gonna offer classes at this one particular school, or we're only gonna offer whatever, but you could expand it all the way to every program, club, extracurricular that we have, and determine a fee if they participated, and then that fee would come from that scholarship fund, if we chose to go that route.
That's complicated.
I don't know that we're ready by August. I mean, I don't, it's good for a district to try it out and see how they do.
This is the first year, so I
Yeah.
think they'll work out some kinks and come up with what that might look like in the future.
Not for the coming up school year, no, I don't think so. I mean, we can watch and see what Washington County does. I mean, that would help, be beneficial, and we only
Yeah,
have
and-
2 students that are asking, is that?
We've had 2 families reach
Oh,
out
2
at this
families,
point.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on that? All right, why don't you go ahead with our,
Okay. Our next 2 items are directly linked to our impact aid funding and 2 requirements that we have through our Indian policies and procedures. The first one are responses to any citizens' comments or questions that come in that are specifically related to Native American students. And each year, the board approves those responses. So you can see there's recommended responses. You can make any changes that you would like to them. Once these responses are approved by the board, then they will be sent out to all of our tribal officials, our chapter officials, and to the parents that are on this list as well. So just be aware, and that's part of our Indian policy and procedures of what we're mandated to do with that. So you can see on there. I just want to note, because this was part of last year's conversation about having multiple ways for parents to give input or ask questions. So we have added to the school district website under the Native American Education Department, right on that their landing page is a link for them to fill out just a very short Google form for public comment and questions. So we did add that to the website. We appreciate that recommendation last year, so that has been added. Other ways that we get these comments, our impact aid hearing, we've received some from White Mesa, anytime, and I think sometimes why we get fewer of these comments coming to the board is that when anyone reaches out, we're having those conversations with them. It may not, or it's, I just want to know about this one particular thing at my school, so it maybe doesn't, reach this level. So we are, and just so you know, on all of these, we have reached out individually to them as well and met with some of them and spent some time going over all of these things. But these would be the official responses from the board that we would submit upon your approval.
Okay, I have a suggestion starting on the second page. So to go back, go up to the top again, for instance, the second one, Whitehorse High School will continue to offer, it's very specific, it says it will offer, that's how the first 4 go. When we get to this top of the second page, I would like to see it say San Juan School District incorporated educational community events instead of made great efforts to. And the same goes for the
3.
following 3, not to, just to delete the made great efforts, but to say exactly
Because
what
they-
was done.
They did
That
in
was
fact
done.
It
incorporate.
almost makes it sound
Yeah.
like, oh, we tried, but.
We tried to.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely make that change.
It would be more direct if.
I just like to say I see the positive in this, in that we have parents that are participating and sharing feedback. The amount of comments that we got from White Mesa Back to School Night, that's just exciting to see that they're trying to be involved. So, and we're also able to point them to the efforts that we are making so that they know how to participate and see the good that we're trying to do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do you
Okay.
want to, now,
Yep.
you can just explain, because there's a whole big paragraph what we're talking about, of what our form is. I'm not
Okay.
going to read it to you.
So first, I want to let you know, we noticed an error, so you have a printed copy that was provided to you as well. We realized Monument Valley High School only included high school and not junior high. So those numbers are actually higher. If you look at the printed copy, it looks like this, it's in color. You should have a copy of that. So I just wanted to note that. When I looked at those, I'm like, this is not adding up. So anyway, we got that fixed, so you have that copy as well. Again, this is part of our, Indian policy and procedures, and really, the purpose of this, the objective, is really to look to determine if we're providing equal access to Native students' offerings. So thinking about not only athletics, but the arts and clubs. Do you see that? So it should have 41 on the very first line next to
Okay.
MVHS. And that's the correct one. Okay. And, comparing this to last year to this year's numbers, there's some that went up, there's some that went a little bit down. With the size of our schools, I don't think we're going to see a major difference in those numbers necessarily. I do want to note a couple of things. I think Monument Valley's numbers have gone up from the past. That's been an area of focus, adding some additional programming at Monument Valley High School. And then Navajo Mountain also has been able to provide some additional clubs. They actually doubled their offerings with their extracurricular and co-curricular activities. This year they had cross-country, student government unity club, and Skills USA. And then next year they're adding a hiking club. So they continue to expand those offerings, which I think is exciting for Navajo Mountain to be able to have some additional opportunities with that smaller school. And again, this is data that we review with the board and then accept any comments or recommendations for improving outcomes. And then we'll also provide this data to tribal officials, chapter officials, and parents of our Native American children.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions for this?
I just want to comment, it's exciting that we have these opportunities. I remember the year after, well, it was 2021, my daughters ran track, and one of them was very competitive and wasn't able to compete at all her senior year in 2020. And that was hard. We went to the state track meet, and I've gone to lots of track meets. I love watching track. And it was very emotional to see her watching her peers compete in events that she wasn't able to compete in. And then I realized as I was listening to the announcements that we had no Monument Valley students, that we had no Whitehorse students, because they still weren't able to participate at that point in 2021. And then I got super emotional because that's a big deal. And I'm so glad that it's coming back alive, because we need that. It's a big part of community, being connected to your school and being able to succeed in academic and athletic goals. So I'm excited to see these things improving, so thank you.
And I would just add on to that we just really appreciate, our administrators and our coaching and their staff, because really getting students involved, having the right people there. I mean, you see various programs where students, and they shift, back and forth sometimes depending on the cohort of the students, but I think having the right people working with those students really makes a big difference and makes them helps the program. So I just can't express enough my appreciation for all of our coaches and advisors and administrators and athletic directors.
I did have a question. One of the things that I'm always getting asked, and I'm not going to take away from the improvement that we see on the schools that are implementing more sports, more arts, more clubs, but the questions that I get from community members, parents, and students is, how do we get more? Like say, MVHS doesn't have drama. How do we implement drama into the school? It always seems to be like, well, San Juan gets this. And is that because we don't have advisors or coaches or people filling in these positions? Or if you could just expound on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of this is economy of scale. So you look at the size of the school and you're thinking drama, that's a class. So
Right.
you have a certified teacher that is teaching a drama class, and then you're having a drama program.
Right.
I think a good example of that is, what we try to do is meet the requests of students and families in the community. Like we don't just offer a program to offer a program. We say, what are your interests? So particular to Monument Valley, they did they able to continue to do this each year, but they did a survey to say, what are you interested, what do you want to do? And we had a band teacher that was leaving, and instead of replacing the band teacher, there was very little interest in band, guitar, all of that. So what they did instead is they added a computer science teacher who's doing, a whole bunch of CTE and computer science classes, and we're seeing, a lot more students that are doing those types of activities, which then is going into, their esports and into robotics, those types of things instead. So some of it is a shift in what they're interested in. Some of it is economy of scale to say, how big is the school, how many students? White Horse has a higher enrollment than Monument Valley, so of course they're most likely going to have more offerings. San Juan High is a larger enrollment than White Horse, so they would have more offerings. So, some of that is just the number of students in a building. Part of it because of the funding for staff. Part of it is just if you only have so many students, they can only participate in so many things. So,
Right.
That's really the heart of it, those two components of it. And I think you'll continue to see adjustments as we move forward. I don't think we're locked into only doing these things. That's going to be, that changes over time of what the interests are and what students want to do. So for example, White Horse added golf back because they have students that are interested in golf again, right? And they haven't done that in a long time. So I think that's the ongoing, question and responsibility of administration is to get those student surveys and say, what are you interested in? And let's put our efforts towards those that the students want to do.
Okay, and that just leads me into, so in order for parents and students to get more of these activities, they're the ones that have to put the initiative forth to ask and participate and work with the administration to get, say, FBLA there where they didn't have it before.
Yeah, and some of that ties into the curricular and courses that we're offering. Some of it would be a shift, if you all of a sudden have a whole bunch of interest in one thing, you're probably going to give up something else.
Right.
So, but again, we want that parent engagement, we want that input from the students and parents to say, what are you interested in? We have, a lot of Unity Club involvement right now with our grants that we're running, and that's a really popular club and a lot of activities. You've approved for them. The board has to attend conferences and that leadership component. So, there's some other things that are happening right now that maybe are taking away from some of what you might see on a sheet like this. But Unity Club's on there. But just realize the more clubs and offerings that you have, you may see lower numbers in other areas.
Okay, thank you for answering.
Okay. All right, we are actually going to go to our director reports, and Miss Anna, you're going to be first. And you're going to talk about food. We've had quite a discussion on food today.
You have? Oh, yes, you have. Not my food.
Not your food.
Well, I can guarantee you the cost of food has gone up. That I can guarantee.
That is.
So there is no question about that. We see it as well. I think you have my little thing.
We're going to let you speak to it.
Okay.
Is that right?
I'll speak to it, yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
You can pull it up there and look at it. You can see our highlights there, our meal totals for the year, 55,203. That combines our breakfast and our lunch. That equals out to a little over 3,100 a day. Our reimbursement amounts this year went up again, which is always good to get reimbursed a little more with the cost of food going up. We served 42,695 more meals this year than last year. And you'll see on the next line, the majority of that is due to the Second Chance Breakfast Program that the state implemented as state law. It went into effect for 3 of our high schools this year, but we added everybody. We went ahead with all 5 high schools and ARL. Rather than try to add them in over time, we just added everybody at the same time. That Second Chance Breakfast is served between first and second period in all of our high schools. It's a bagged breakfast. Some schools, they pick it up at the cafeteria. Some schools, they pick it up in the hallway next to the office. It's ready to go. Some of them, they can choose to take their milk, which is one of the things we've kind of started leaning toward. We're making adjustments in that program as we go and as we learn. But you can see we served 36,000 more breakfasts with that program, which is quite a few. So we had a lot more breakfasts going out, a lot of students coming and getting that. Some of our schools have used a ton of it, but almost all of our high schools are almost serving more Second Chance breakfast than regular breakfast at this point. I know there's data that shows that high school students don't necessarily like to eat first thing in the morning. They're hungrier a little later in the morning, so it kind of fits that data. I know at Whitehorse, they're probably getting the most use out of it at Whitehorse. I bet there's days we've served 75 breakfasts in Second Chance, which is a lot. That's one of the challenges with the program, is just figuring out how many to prepare on any given day, because you never know who's coming. But also, we have a cook in LaSalle. That's a highlight for me, because it means I'm not going to LaSalle in August. Not that I don't love LaSalle. I'm just going to clarify that.
How
because
long
I
did you
do.
go out there?
This last stint was 12 weeks, but over the last 2 years, I've probably spent almost half a year there at least, or more.
And then coming back to the district office. to
So
work.
yeah, I've spent a lot of time in LaSalle, gotten to know those kids very well. They're very sad I'm leaving, because I am Aunt Anna. I don't know how they'll survive without me, but it's good for me to be in a kitchen a little bit. I don't know that it's that much I want to be in a kitchen, but to see what challenges my staff faces, to kind of do the things they're doing every day, to experience those things, and to kind of know what they need a little bit better. So I think that's a benefit to my program. Our challenges, lack of substitutes. I mean, we see that in every aspect of the district. That was a problem in LaSalle. No substitutes means, and we only have one staff there, means I was the staff there. So substitutes, always a problem. We have new USDA regulations coming out that all of our associations have fought very hard to get removed, but we lost those battles. So we will see added sugar restrictions coming in school year 25-26 that we will have to start implementing into our programs. There'll be a second phase of that, as well as more sodium restrictions coming in 27-28. So, I mean, there's always a chance that things change, but for right now, we're going to start preparing for those. Some of the struggles with that is there is no more money coming. They're not increasing the reimbursement amounts. The federal government is not increasing what they're giving us to pay for these new things. And now, coming on the heels of the next challenge, struggling to still catch up with a lot of those things from COVID, a lot of companies stopped making things that were school meal compliant during COVID because they just couldn't keep up. We're still struggling to find some of those things, and now we're making new rules that they're going to have to make even more new things that are compliant with the new rules. So, and those are not cheap. They all come with the price, and there's no more funding coming in to cover those costs. So we'll see how that goes. And then our challenge, filling open spots with long-term employees, specifically in our smallest schools. We still have some struggles getting people that stay. We get someone for a year, then they leave. We get someone for 6 months, and then they leave. We do have 2 open spots right now, but we do have applications for both of them. So I'm optimistic that we go into next year fully staffed, and we stay that way for a minute. We would really like that. Goals, we're going to complete a review of the district wellness policy next year with each school community council. We'll present any changes that we would like to the board probably in the spring, as we will be preparing for another 5-year annual review in the coming years, and that is required every 3 years that we do an assessment of our wellness policy. So we will do that. We're going to be reviewing the sugars and sodium numbers in our menus, trying to evaluate what items will have to go, where we can make adjustments and changes. We'll look at menu changes for alternative items that meet those standards, and then we're going to continue to fine-tune our second chance breakfast. We still have a little bit of complaints from custodians about kids throwing away their fruit and making trash cans very heavy, their milk. So we're trying to move to where the majority of the breakfast is bagged, but the fruit and the milk is separate. They can grab it and take it, or they can not if they choose not to. And that way, there's a little less waste in the program. So we're kind of moving those directions as we get feedback from schools. So that's where we're at in food service.
So I have a question. Why such the increase in the meals served this year versus, I mean, why are we seeing that so? Is it just because of the second chance?
Almost
So
entirely.
that number is included in the second?
Yep, almost entirely because of second
Okay.
chance breakfast. We just drastically increased our meals served at breakfast to secondary students.
Okay. And then, you remember the snack at MES? Are they still doing that? Are they going to do it? Tell me about that.
We did it last year. It's called after fresh fruit and vegetable. None of the schools reapplied for it this year. The schools applied for that on their own. Nobody reapplied for it this year. We had some real challenges with the program. They don't provide enough funding to fully staff the program. That means somebody else has to find staff. We don't have staff hours in our budget to cover it. The schools didn't have paras that had hours to cover it because they're all maxed out. And so that became a problem, finding volunteers to come in. And so I spoke with the state office about those challenges in the program so that they could provide feedback, hopefully, to the USDA. And maybe that we can help over time get some adjustments made to that. But there definitely needed to be more funding for staff time.
But with that set aside, and they could have it, what do you think? Is it good, bad?
Overall, it was good. I think
Yeah.
Montezuma Creek supported it a little better than some of our Monticello teachers. I think the teachers who supported it had a really great time with it. I think it really went well in those classrooms. We had a handful of teachers that did not support it in Monticello. They weren't interested. They complained about it a lot. And so you can't succeed if you don't get buy-in from your staff. So
Sure.
I think that definitely hurt. So.
Okay, interesting. Questions?
I'm curious, what do you usually serve in your second chance breakfasts?
So second chance breakfast will have a fruit, a milk, juice, and then a grain item. Either a fruital, a muffin, a bagel, something of that nature.
Okay.
It's a cold breakfast.
A cold breakfast, okay.
Second chance is not hot breakfast. Hot breakfast has to be served in the cafeteria, so.
Okay, and I know I spoke with Ms. Schaefer about the second chance breakfast and it being really beneficial to the students because there was a lot of students that were getting the first breakfast but still continuing to be hungry enough to get the second one. My question would be, do we just need to continue to encourage our parents and students to get that first breakfast in?
So students cannot have both breakfasts.
Oh,
They
okay.
can only choose one.
Okay.
They cannot eat both times.
Okay.
Yeah.
That-
So.
I could have been wrong on that
Yeah, the
part
federal
then.
regulations require us to only serve one meal of each type, so we can only serve one meal to each student.
Okay.
We cannot serve them more than once.
Okay.
So they can choose hot or they can choose cold. Our cafeteria is pretty good at watching.
Okay.
As we see more kids coming through that second chance line, we may start re-implementing the card swipe system in our high schools,
Okay.
just to make sure we're not counting anybody twice, especially as we move into audit years and things like that, as we get further into the program. That's definitely something we're considering, is re-adding that swipe card for high school students, just so we can verify that we are not serving someone twice. Most of the time, our kitchens are pretty good at knowing who their kids are.
Okay.
And being pretty aware of if anybody's trying to come through more than once. And we haven't seen a lot that we're concerned about this year of that.
But wouldn't that be concerning as well if they want to come through a second time?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely. But we aren't able to
Right.
reimburse a second meal, so somebody has to pay for it on that end.
Right.
And however that happens. In some of our schools, when we've had a share table, items that kids take and then don't open or don't eat, they can't be things that are served, they have to be something that's
Right.
served packaged. Does that make sense?
sealed.
Yeah, so a lot of our schools will use a share table, and so if I take something and I don't want it, I put it on that table, because we in the kitchen can't take it back. But the school can do what they want with it at that point, because it's theirs. And so sometimes the counselor or various other people will take those items to their classroom to use for students.
Okay, that's
that are-
probably-
That are really in need,
Okay,
so we can try to help out with that.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Do the second chance students, do they just take, you say it's between first and second hour, do they just take it to their second hour class? Okay.
Yep. And I expected a lot of complaints about that, but we really haven't had any. I've talked to a few custodians who've just said, our trash cans are getting really heavy with milk being thrown away and fruit being thrown away, and so we've kind of tried to mitigate that a little bit. But overall, we haven't heard any complaints, really. Most of our schools have been very happy with second chance breakfast.
Great. Well, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Have a wonderful day.
Hopefully your route will just to be to the district office this next year. Thank you. All right. We are to special education report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, again.
All right.
All right, thank you, Jared, for pulling that up. We'll go to the second slide. This is just overall data across the district. When we ran our numbers. Our December 1 is our big state report that we put together as far as numbers go. So from December 1 numbers, this is what we're looking at. We have our classifications, then we have what type of student falls in that classification. One thing that I want to point out is we do have 337 Native American students and 138 white students in our counts. So that's about 71% of our special education population is Native American as compared to 56% of our district population. So just always watching and monitoring that. It's always a big concern. We do implement, or students have to qualify for special education, so we do implement standardized testing. We also do some nonverbal testing as well, so that we try to make sure that we're not overqualifying students when they don't need to be. The next slide is our grade levels, the number of students per grade level. I think that's just an important thing to look at. Some grade levels are higher, some are lower, and it's just interesting to see that. I then next listed our challenges. We are still working to find speech-language pathologists or speech-language technicians that are certified. So we've been contracting for the last few years with providers. That's worked okay. We'd definitely love to have more in person. And so we're working on that. Achievement of students with disabilities on end-of-level testing is always at the front of our minds. We're wanting to make sure that our students are being held to high standards and that they're achieving at high standards. So we have a goal later on that addresses that. And then the last challenge is just exiting students from special education. For some parents, it's really scary when their student no longer qualifies for special education services. We get them to a reeval and we find that great things have happened, they've made growth, and they don't qualify. So parents can sometimes be nervous. The student themselves could be nervous. So we're working to help parents understand that how great that is, and the student, how awesome their growth has been, and that we work to do that. But we also, if we had higher achievement of students with disabilities, then we'd probably see more exiting. And so special education is definitely job security, so we are always going to have that need, but we want to make sure that we're doing the best for our students that we possibly can. The next slide talks about school nursing, as that's under my purview. So I think this is important. Over the last school year, we have tally marks that are kept at each school. You may have seen them in our offices, and they don't identify any student, it's just a tally mark. So last year we had 9,305 visits to the sick room or the wellness room, or I would say sick room. We had 4 911 calls for health-related emergencies. And out of those 9,305 visits, we had 768 total students sent home. So we're working hard to keep them. That comes from like our medication administration that we have parents participate in, that we offer different medications like ibuprofens or cough syrups or different things like that. And then out of that, 7,403 were from the elementary level and 1,906 were from the secondary level. So we definitely see students needing the nurses or needing the sick room more often in our elementary schools, as we've seen for years that we've kept this data. Want to talk about goals. Next, this we submit every year to the states. We develop these goals as a team and work on what this looks like. And they have streamlined the process a little bit. They want 3 goals around student achievement, professional learning, and then compliance. So that you'll see those 3 headings there. So under student achievement, we want to make sure that our students are achieving at high levels. We have current levels in there. So I've listed language arts and math because that's tested 3rd through 10th grade. And then we could potentially look at ACT, but I decided to focus on 3rd through 10th grade, where we have our RISE and our Utah Aspire Plus. So currently in language arts, on average, our students with disabilities are achieving at 2.5% proficiency. That's low. So we really want to raise that. And so we would like that to grow by 7% over the next 3 school years so that we're seeing a 9.5% achievement rate. The other thing is math. In that one, we're looking at increasing from 8.3% to 15.3% over the next 3 years, so an increase of 7%. And if we're doing our jobs right, we should hopefully see this. With the understanding that these students do have a disability, there are challenges, there are barriers to learning, so how do we work within those barriers and challenges to do that? For professional learning, and this goes to, I'm so glad that we are working with Lisa Boyce at Utah State University in the grant, because she is working to provide us with an autism specialist that can come and help train our special education teachers. Anybody else who wants to participate, we're going to open that, but I want to have 100% of our special education teachers trained by an autism specialist throughout next school year, that we're working to meet those needs. Autism, our rates of autism have increased. The diagnosis is becoming more prevalent in the community, and we want to make sure that we're meeting those needs of our students to the best of our abilities. So that I felt was really important. The team felt that. And then as far as compliance goes, we want to make sure, I look at this as a cycle. If we have well-written, well-developed plans that are individualized for students and they're implemented well, then we're going to get better achievement and we're going to see better outcomes. So we want to have that. So what I want to do is really work hard with the special education teachers to write smart IEP goals that are based on the students' needs, and then work to implement or work on how we track those goals and see what progress is actually being made. So we've been working on that. We want to continue to work on it, and we really want to make it a concerted effort. So those are our goals. And then celebrations. I want to end on a high note. Currently, we have all of our special education teacher positions filled, which wonder of wonder, miracle of miracles, right? Like we are sitting really good. And part of that is the Apple SPED program that USBE is providing options for teachers or individuals with a bachelor's degree to come in, learn how to be a special education teacher, get the certification, work on that, and we've got several of our newer teachers that are part of that. So we're really excited for that. And thank you to HR for being so flexible and helping in that, like recruiting and hiring and those different things. Last year, we had the opportunity with some ESSER funds or COVID money to work with a company called iLearn that helped bring in supports to our district. And that was awesome. It helped me as a leader of special education, but it helped bring in coaching for our teachers, implementing best practices with students, and really has helped, I think, change the trajectory of some of our teachers and our students. And it's been an awesome thing. So that's a celebration I want to bring out. And then no one person can do this alone. So when I say being part of teams, I have great itinerant staff. So we have our people at the district level that go out and serve students. We have great SPED teachers, boots on the ground. Our paras, I should have included them in there. I want to include them in there. Our special education paras. School leaders who are embracing the idea that special education students or students with disabilities are everyone's student. And then also district leadership for being willing to think outside the box, really help be thought partners and really work to help meet the needs of our, probably one of our most vulnerable populations. So you can't do it alone, and I really recognize the team and the effort that everybody puts into this. So, any questions?
I have a question for you. I noticed on your data,
Yeah.
how much higher your male numbers were than your female numbers. Is there anything to back that, or is it just that's the way it is?
That's nationally how it is.
Really?
It just is. It's typically more males qualify for special education services than females. Just traditionally, we see that. There's not, that I know of, a standardized test that says if they're a male, do it this way. If they're a female, do it this way. We just do it based on the student. So
Yeah.
it just is what it is. So potentially, I don't know.
And there's quite
It's a
a
big
gap there. It's not
Yes.
like we're a few numbers.
Right.
It's a gap.
It's a big
That's
one.
that's interesting.
If you look at national numbers, that we're following a similar trend. Statewide numbers, we're following a similar trend.
Interesting.
More males than females.
Any other questions? Thank you for what you do.
Thank
We
you, guys. I
appreciate it.
appreciate
Thank you
your
for coming.
support. You're
So-
welcome.
Okay, we're going to jump back and finish our last item on our agenda, and then I think what we'll do is we have a closed session item we'll go into before our break. So, Superintendent, if you want to finish the
Okay.
TSSA.
So this is our annual TSSA recommendation framework to the board for approval. It shows our expected allocation. You know, we can allocate up to 25% of teacher salary, which we've done since the beginning of the TSSA grant. And then priority 2 is our social emotional support. So this helps support partially with school counselors in our buildings, and then also supplementing social workers so that we can provide that social emotional support. And then priority 3 is then implementing funding for each individual school to use that funding as it aligns to the San Juan Quest model. So that's the allocation there. We did fix the Montezuma Creek comma, so that has been fixed on this form, just so you're aware. Slight little error. What will happen, so the board approves the framework, but you also need to be approving individual school plans. So in September, we'll have on the board agenda the individual school plans with their goals, their measurements, with the money that they have allocated as well, and then you can approve their plans at that time. But this part of the overall framework, knowing that we're moving into the new school year, July 1 with funding, we would like, if possible, to be approved today.
Okay, any questions regarding this? Okay. All right, so we are done with our agenda, so we do have a closed session item, and it will be regarding personnel. So if I can get a motion to go into closed session, and then after we're finished with that, we will break until 6. All right, so I need a motion.
I move that we go into closed session regarding personnel.
Okay, motion by Nan, do I have a second?
I can second.
Okay, let's do roll call. Nan, do you want to start?
Nan Barton, yes?
Chloe Manelli, yes?
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes?
Mary Shumway, yes.
Okay, so we'll give about 5 minutes to clean the room out and get us going, if that's okay. A few minutes. So we are going to let your relative sister give your award. So you get to come to the front, please, and we will come to the side, and you get the whole floor. And you get to come clear the front and face the audience.
Katie Perkins, working to keep the special education department well organized, running smoothly, and being a wealth of knowledge. We could not do the critical work we have to do without her. Great job, and that's from Paul Murdoch. Katie is such an asset to have working for the district. She is always willing to help anyone out with whatever they need. She is incredibly supportive. She is a team player. She is fantastic. We love her and are happy to be able to work with her. I don't know who said that, but it was in October of 2023. I've had many occasions to work with Katie on complicated and sensitive student needs. I have been so impressed with her dedication to helping parents feel heard and supported. She presents solutions in a clear and positive manner. Much of what she does daily is an uphill journey, and she navigates it with a smile and contagious cheer. And that was Eva Ewald. So, and oh, sorry, it's right here. I was still in it for myself.
We'll get a name placard when the CTE teachers come back. They're the ones who make them for us. Use our CTE department too.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
I was more nervous about this than I am about teaching Zumba.
Oh, wow. Do you need to do a little Zumba move so you can feel better?
I feel way more comfortable with the soundtrack and all that.
That's funny. You know, one thing I have to say about you, I never see you without a smile. So every time I come to the district office, so thank you. We appreciate what you do.
That contagious cheer.
Yes, it is.
Got it.
And maybe you could just get Paul to join in Zumba at 7:30 in the morning. Oh, good job. So we have some office secrets, right?
All the principals to do it.
Oh.
A little break and get some Zumba.
There you go. That's awesome. So.
I remember that. That was awesome. I got the video.
Even Tyrell enrolled.
Whoa,
Even
whoa.
Tyrell,
She's telling secrets.
Even. That's great. I love that.
Something for the
great.
newsletter.
That's how much we love Katie. She got
I could see that, so. All right, so we're going to move down our agenda. Thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our fun meeting, or you're welcome to leave. Thanks. All right, we do not have any citizens' comments, so, and we've gone into closed session, so we're going to move to our consent agenda. So if I can get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that the consent agenda be approved.
Okay, I have a motion by Steve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Nan. Is there any comments regarding this consent agenda? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we could go down to our action items and finish that up, and then we can finish out with our public hearing. Okay, let's just do that.
Well, let's see. We have the public hearing and then those.
But we can move on our agenda. So we could do the action items and the information items, and then we'll.
Finish with the hearing?
And finish with the hearing, yes. So
the closed session on there states that it can be moved, but.
do you have something in the open meeting law that shows we can't?
No,
Okay.
I don't know that we, anyway.
Okay, then we'll just go forward.
To move, but.
Okay, so the first action item is to approve our Connect for Learning preschool curriculum adoption. So if I have a motion for that. Go ahead, me, you.
I move that we approve the adoption of the Connect for Learning preschool curriculum.
Okay, motion by Nan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any comments, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone oppose? Okay, San Juan School District Policy 5280, Home Instructional Programs. Do I have a motion for that?
I make a motion to approve the SJSD Policy 5280 Home Instructional Program
Okay.
policy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mary, did you say yes?
Yes.
Okay. San Juan School District Policy 4540, Extracurricular Programs.
I move that the changes to policy 4540 extracurricular programs be approved.
Okay, motion by Steve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And no one is opposed. And then San Juan School District travel reimbursement rates. We have a motion for that?
I move we increase the lunch rate by $2 for staff and employees.
Okay. So motion by, do you want to save, do we need to save from what to what? Are we good with that?
The motion's clear enough by $2
Okay.
that
Perfect.
we would increase it by $2.
Okay. So motion by Mary, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then official responses to formally submitted suggestions and comments to improve the education of Native American students and to provide equitable access to programs, services, and activities. Is there a way to shorten that motion? Do we need to say everything?
You don't have to say everything, but we do need to probably note the change that you recommended.
I move to accept the responses, but to remove San Juan School, or has made great efforts.
Okay, motion by Mary, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And then TSSA framework for 2024, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I make a motion to approve the TSSI framework for 2024, 2025.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. I don't always remember things, but I did look back and I don't have any, I didn't see that as a board we had any input or any information brought to us about, what the district was looking at doing and get input from the board about where to spend this money. So I think it's premature for me to vote for this.
Okay, any other comments? Do you want to address how we came to those?
Yeah, so TSSA has changed over the years, and as we've received additional allocation, input has been given in a variety of ways. Principals give input on this. We haven't adjusted the categories of the framework. As additional allocations have become available, we've just adjusted the amount in each section of the framework. So if the board is not supportive of this, we can take it back to principals and to district staff. That, you know, the individual plans for the schools will go to SEC. That's part of the TSSA legislation that's changed over time. And so that's why you'll get the individual school allocations at that point. This isn't a major change from previous TSSA plans. I mean, for the past number of years, this is what we've put in the framework. So it's consistent to what we've done in the past. But if the board has concerns with how we've allocated this is, you know, this funding, I would say, has less restrictions than other funding. When the legislature, I don't know if you remember what the whole controversy was with this, to get this funding in the first place. And the point of that was also to make this funding less restrictive, so that schools could make some decisions that were what they needed to do for their school. And so over time, some things have been put in, like you need to get input from your SEC. It doesn't necessarily mean the SEC has to vote on it like they do their school land trust plan. It's just getting their input. So I think that's an intentional with TSSA, is that these are less strings attached than other funding that we receive from the state and federal government.
Which is why I think it's appropriate that local school boards also weigh in on it each year. You know, what may have been decided by one group of board, and of course I've been on it, you know, I've been on it for a while, and so has many of the board members, but just because one year has been decided on something, I think it's important that the school board help make decisions based on input, you know, from all stakeholders, and that we're more of a part of the process instead of seeing a document on not even Friday this time, seeing a document on a Saturday and just rubber stamping it. I think we should be part of those decisions and the process to get there, and maybe even understand, you know, past things and why, and if it works, or if there's a reason to adjust things. I think that's important to include the school boards.
And I will say the decision to support social workers and school counselors, I mean, that is a need, I think, that has been evident in all the presentations you've received this year, both from schools and from the Student Services Department. I mean, I think this is an ongoing challenge that we have, that we've seen, particularly post-pandemic, with the social emotional needs that students have, the mental health needs. If the board chooses not to fund that portion of it, we will have to, there will not be other funding for social workers. So we would have to not have the social workers that we have. I mean, this funding is really crucial to meet the mental health needs of our students.
I'm not specifically opposed necessarily to this. I'm just saying we get it on a Saturday, and then, you know, we're just told we're not part of the process, and we're locally elected board members, and they have made it so that there's less strings attached so that we can earmark it for us. But if we want, and this board has, you know, we can do that. We can say we don't really want to be part of the decision making, and we want you to bring us something, then we'll approve it. I mean, there's all types. I'm just bringing up a point about the process and involving the board in the process of coming to these kinds of things. As some board members that are new, you know, haven't seen it, well, I guess we've seen it once before, each board member, but it takes a while to remember what comes across our desk each year, and to have us in the loop as this is being prepared for us, and not just show up it comes on a Saturday and we make a decision on a Wednesday, and we're not actually we're just relying on other people to make the decision. So again, I'm not necessarily arguing with the document, just with the process of how it comes to us.
And I guess I can answer to that too, as a new board member. I understand where you're coming from, Mary, as us being new, but the needs of the school district is not new. We know that we need help with teacher salary as well as social emotional support.
and those are clearly written in the priorities. The reason why I would approve it is because these are 3 valid needs that we do need within the schools. And I had a question earlier that I had asked Christy, which was how are these funds allocated, whereas some numbers are lower than others? And that was, of course, my big concern, is because I'd like the disbursements to be equally, but as I was told, it was based on enrollment. So where the priority goes, I mean, overall, the general consensus is the 3 priorities are listed that we do need it. So that would be my reasoning for motioning to approve this document on my end, if that needed clarification.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right, do you want to do the information items real quick, and then we'll...
So we do have board meeting July 17th if needed, and then August 7th will be our next board meeting after that, before school starts. And then, of course, we have the upcoming July 4th and July 24th holidays.
In August, school will be back in session, so it's crazy, but... Okay, we are at 6:15, so we are going to jump into our budget hearings. So we will turn the time over to the superintendent and Tyrell to handle our budget public hearing.
All right, Tyrell, I think I hand it to you.
All right.
Okay.
No problem. I put a handout in front of you. This is new information as of this morning. So the state has given us the basic tax rate that is designated to support the minimum school program. So we now have that. That's the one we wait on. We don't really have any control over that as a local school board. You don't set that rate. It's set by the state. That came in at 0.001408, which is lower than what the legislature anticipated it being. So they give an estimated basic rate during the legislative session. I believe it's estimated, it's in your, we use the estimated rate in the budget book. That first one, the minimum school program on the first page. This is page 51 of the budget book document. If you're in there. Anyway, so this handout kind of shows the change there. So you can see on page 51, the certified tax rate with the basic rate from the state does come in at 0.006774, which is lower than what we levied last year, which was 0.006788, which is a good thing. You know, if our local levies go down, we're taxing our local population less, and the certified rate is designed to help us maintain our local revenues neutral. So this is a good thing. This is due to the fact that our assessed valuations in the county did slightly increase by $30 million from the previous year. So those changes on page 51 and 52 show the change in local revenue and the local tax rates. The recommendation today would be to adopt the certified tax rate with the rates that are proposed in this document. So each rate receives its own certified rate. We would be changing those slightly just to make sure that the overall rate meets the certified tax rate. So that's what the 0.006774 is. If the board chooses to follow that recommendation, there is a recommended action in board docs that outlines each of the individual rates, what they would be set at, that you have control over. And as a reminder, that's the capital local levy, the voted leeway, and the board local levy. The minimum school program or basic levy, the charter levy, are set for us. We must levy those. We don't get to set those as a school board. So those other 3 are the ones we're looking at today. These other pages just kind of show the impact to the local revenue. Other than that, your board books remain largely unchanged from our May meeting. The only update that I did include that's in the revised 24 budget and proposed 25 is additional impact aid revenue that was received. We received it just last week, the final allotment for fiscal year 24. And that's not in these handouts, but that is in the attached document from this weekend. So The budget, again, as a reminder, we set and talked about in May. We proposed that budget with assuming that we adopt the certified rate to hold our local revenue neutral. And so we talked through several different things last month, just about state revenue changes, and that's why you see some changes there. One thing I'd like to just remind the board of, with the 3.7% increase that we provided in the May meeting, that was with impact aid revenues being adjusted and reallocated, a little bit more money going to the general fund. Those dollars are more flexible than others, so we would just propose monitoring that as we go throughout this school year and see where we land come the end of the year, and it's possible that we could put some more money back into capital. As we look at the capital fund balances in your budget book, you'll notice that, even after we spend all the projects that we've outlined, we still are going to end with a $15 million surplus. I shouldn't call it surplus, but a fund balance in the capital fund. So we're in a really, I feel, a good place financially with the different projects that we've done and what we have available to us to continue to meet ongoing needs. So with that, if there's questions from any of you, we can try to address them.
Any questions?
And you said the updated on the impact aid is not on this one, but it's on the.
Yeah, it's in the budget book, the impact aid. So that's the federal revenue. This handout that I gave you it's just local revenues and its impact because of with the changes to the property tax rates. So that's the only thing that changed from the previous book. But the other schedule of federal revenues shows that in the general fund and the capital fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Tyrell, would you go over, I asked you the questions this afternoon about student-teacher ratios and our keeping in budget that way, and as a board for, I don't know how many years that's been not been discussed or explained, and I think it's helpful and good for board members to know and understand keeping with that.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and I might lean on Laura a little bit to help me out with some ratios here. But so we do, when we set the budget, we're looking at staffing ratios, and every year each of the schools looks at their staffing ratio based on the number of students that they have enrolled, and we have different staffing ratios for the different schools and even grade levels. Laura, do you want to help me out with what exactly we have those set out? I know like in certain schools, so we have staffing ratios that are lower student to teacher ratios, if you'll.
We actually have different ratios for the River Region and the Baja Region as well. So in the River Region, K1 is 1 to 19, 2 to 3rd grade, 2nd to 3rd grade, 1 to 21, 4th to 5th, 1 to 23, and in the Baja Region, K3 is 121, 4 to 6 is 1 to 27. And in the secondary, our River Region is 1 to 19, and our Baja is 1 to 21.
Thank you. So, and to that point, so as we look at these and as the schools look at those, like as student enrollment declines or increases, it warrants the need for an additional teacher, or a lot of times if the enrollment has decreased at a school, and their staffing formula calls for that they're overstaffed, a lot of that times that'll happen through attrition, where we'll lose a teacher and then we just don't replace them because there isn't enough students to warrant another teacher in the school. So the budget is created around those staffing formulas, that we maintain them at those class sizes, that we're not trying to reduce the class sizes any further or necessarily increase them. We're trying to hit that sweet spot of the staffing formulas. So those ratios that Laura went over are used as we project what the staffing ratios and formulas would be for the schools, and we create the budget around that as well. Does that help answer that, Mary?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I just wanted, we used to talk about that a lot, annually, every year, and I used to have those memorized. because we discussed that so much. A lot of the things had been discussed so that when we come to the budget, we already know what kinds of things keeps us as San Juan School District with a healthy budget, and it helps me as a board member know and understand and be confident or not confident in voting for the budget and having a more clear understanding. Now, that's just, one of the things. Some of the other things I think that is helpful, and not just this time of year, but throughout the year, so that when this budget comes, it's not all, a fire hose. And when we look at the graphs where this year, we're the 9th highest tax, and I brought that up of 41 school districts, but yet we bring in the lowest per student because of our economy, because of our lack of opportunity to have access to natural resources, basically. That's when San Juan County was wealthy and had a good economy, as that extraction industry. And so that plays a major role in how we fund education. And as board members, we can just accept the money that comes in, and we can budget it based on those ratios and other things. But to be proactive about the things that could benefit San Juan County and the revenue that comes into San Juan School District would be helpful long-term for education and ongoing how things are actually funded. Those types of things are helpful for us to know. So I guess I'd like to suggest that there's things within the budget that be scheduled each month, so that by the time we get around to the budget, we know what has gone into that, and why we're where we're at. So I don't know, be part of a little work session to say, what things do we need to understand better or be reminded of? And for instance, that the topic of just the last thing that we, the TSSI money, is that what it is? It's just TSS, just to be brought along with the process, that this is going to come to us next month, and this is what we're looking at. And if we could schedule some things like that, I think would be nice, and help us really prepare for the budget hearing, the final hearing.
A subcommittee of some sort, like an orientation.
Or our meeting is scheduled, the way it's advertised, we call the 3 o'clock the work session, and it's really, we're just going through the line items of our agenda that day. It's not really a work session, but we could schedule things like that, like what things are we not talking about throughout the year? And we could do it based on the budget, this final big meeting that we have in June, that's a big deal, and how much do we understand about it, and what goes into that. And it's a lot to do it all in one night. So if we had a true work session where that was we broke down those different areas and then plugged it into our meetings throughout the year is a thought. There would be other ways of doing that too. Administration going through it, and but we need to, as school board members, saying, what do we know about the media center and how it works, and what improvements can be made, and what the struggles are within the district that we don't know about. What do we need to know about AT? And they have the reports, but we don't actually sit down and have real work session about those types of things. So anyways, just a suggestion.
Okay, anything else? All right, so do we have any comments, Eva? Okay, so I need a motion to approve the 2024-25 budget. If I can get a motion for that?
I move to adopt the revised fiscal year 2024 budget and the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget, and to also set the tax rate at the certified rate by setting the board local levy to .000761, the voted local levy at .0016, and the capital local levy at .003.
Okay. Did you get all that, Eva?
Rob got it for me. He's back in the recommended.
Okay, perfect. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Anything else? Any other?
Should they both be the same, in the same motion that, yes?
They can be in the same
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, and there will be no meeting in July. We will meet on August 7th, unless we have something come up. Thank you, everyone. Okay, you can skedaddle.
All right. Did you sign that, TCC?
I'll give all these